You're watching UATV. We're at the Kiev Security and Defense Conference here in the Ukrainian capital. We're joined by Ihor Kabanenko. He's a retired Ukrainian admiral and he is a former deputy defense minister. And he's currently working on the Ukrainian Advanced Project Agency. Now, welcome to the program. Some of the things that have been discussed today during the Defense and Security Conference has been the Strategic Defense Bulletin. Now, this is obviously a range of reforms and processes that Ukraine has to go through, which is part of Ukraine's kind of path on achieving NATO-style standards, and Ukraine has great plans. It plans to achieve these standards by 2020.
Yes, this is most important document, strategic document in defense and security sphere. It was approved by the President of Ukraine in 2016, in June of 2016. And this document has 5 strategic goals in defense reform, in defense sphere, how to transform our defense and security sector. And of course, all our activities mentioned in this document are under NATO umbrella. And our International Center for Security and Defense Strategies, a recently created organization, proposed monitoring of Strategic Defense Bulletin of Ukraine, and we propose couple approaches, some of them quantitative, some of them qualitative, how to evaluate, how to estimate results, current results of implementation of this defense bulletin, not only based on, let's say, government-provided information, but also by the interview of different soldiers, officers, NGOs.
And I understand that one of your tasks is overseeing how this works. Now would you say, from your point of view, would you say that Ukraine achieving NATO standards within its military, is that realistic by 2020?
Yes, it's a good question, because result of monitoring will allow to estimate how we so far from real aim, real goal, because in 2020 Ukraine make obligation to achieve those standards, different standards, operational, technical, administrative, other standards. And it was important not only to sign some document, but to provide real roadmap, how to implement in the reality, to bring in the reality. So this is our task, to understand how right now this security and defense sector moves to achieve this goal. So
do you think it's realistic of Ukraine achieving NATO standards by 2020?
It's realistic, but it is important to, again, I would say it is important not only to sign some documents, letters, laws, but implement them, to bring to the reality.
And have you seen a lot of these laws being implemented?
Yes, a lot of obstacles we can see in this way. For example, it's former Soviet Union mentality, former Soviet Union stereotypes existing in the Ministry of Defense, in General Staff and Armed Forces, and also in our society. Of course, clarification, what does it mean, NATO standards? Because it's more than 1,200 different standards, each standard at least 100 pages. It's important not only to translate, but implement. It's a lot of work, especially concerning technical standards.
Right, but what would be some of the key areas which Ukraine needs to implement now, right at this moment? Right when there's a war going on in the East, what are the key standards that Ukraine needs to implement? Like, what are the key reforms within this strategic bulletin?
You know, I would answer this question based on one very important bullet. It's not just only aim to achieve NATO standard. It's important to bring interoperability between NATO armed forces and Ukrainian armed forces. This is key aspect. Because interoperable forces can not only cooperate on diplomatic or military diplomatic level, they can act together. This is important. They understand each other. They have common procedures. In terms of most important standards, I think there are command and control standards, structural standards, operational standards based on NATO doctrines, different inter-services and services doctrines, and also technical standards. And I think it's also crucially important because it's a way to not only to buy some pieces of equipment or weapon or armament, it's a way to bring for transfer of technologies to our armed forces, because this nature of this warfare, somebody calls this as a hybrid warfare, some new generation warfare. Nature of this warfare is technological, so it is important to raise technological superiority on battlefield for our armed forces. This is the way.
Right. Some of the things that we've been hearing from various military analysts at the Kiev Defense Conference is that some of Ukraine's top military commanders lack the kind of skills that are required to have in order to operate in an environment which has high cybersecurity standards. Now, would you say that that's correct from your experience?
It's also some of aspects: cyber security, electronic warfare, information warfare. There are new domains of warfare, and of course, it is important to bring not only new skills for personnel, but new technologies in this sphere to be effective.
But do you think some of the top military command, do you think that they can adapt to this? Do you think that they have already started adapting to this?
It's a crucial question right now to understand not only for them, to understand not only former, let's say, Soviet Union operational art and implement that, but also to learn lessons in terms of this type of new new generation warfare. This is of course key question, and of course I think here it's important center of gravity for their improvement of their knowledge and skills.
And from your experience, obviously you're a retired admiral. That's a huge title within the military. You have contacts within some of the top echelons of the military, I would assume. And when you speak to people of that kind of level, do you get an understanding that they are willing to grow and develop in fields of cyber security? Because this seems to be one of the key issues that Ukraine is currently facing. From what I've spoken to quite a few people at the defense conference, and the main topic on everyone's lips is cyber security, and Ukraine has obviously been under attack of Russian hackers. So is the top level of Ukraine's security sector, are they military sector, are they willing to learn to adapt to these new war environment, to this hybrid war environment?
My answer would be next. It's a wide area, wide spectrum of problems which necessary to solve, and it's a wide area for implementation of new technology. Cyber defense, cyber security, it's from my perspective one of key areas. And of course, it's important to see a little bit far from today's situation. It's some kind of strategic thinking, some kind of strategic skills for personnel. I think somebody from Ministry of Defense and General Staff, they understand pretty well that, but somebody no. This is reality, existing reality, because most of them, they concentrate efforts on the situation in eastern Ukraine, because there right now most dangerous situation in terms of possibilities for development. But I think it is important to keep in mind what this also some lessons from this kind of hybrid warfare. What a lot of factions they they exist in a hidden format, not an overt. And of course, I agree with you. This is a huge area for improvement.
And I'm sure Ukraine will continue to move forward. And we've heard that there's a few projects being popping up. I mean, the Estonian defense advisor we've been speaking with him, and he's been telling us that there are companies, Estonian companies, that could potentially be interested in cooperating with Ukraine. Estonia is known for cyber security and being very, very on that. I'm glad to hear that there's improvements in the sector in the higher echelons.
It's a good way to improve capabilities in this field for our armed forces, and also not only for our armed forces but security and defense sector, all security and defense sector. And this conference also some contact. It was a possibility to get some contact, and I think we'll use those contacts for cooperation. As you mentioned, Estonian skills, Estonian experience in this field also important for us. But from our side, especially from private sector, they can bring also some advantages. It's always in this particular area, it's a win-win situation. It's mutually beneficial.
I see. Well, thank you so much for having a chat with us today. You're watching UATV. We've been joined by Ihor Kabanenko. He's a Ukrainian retired admiral, and he's currently working with the Ukrainian Advanced Project Agency, helping to reform the defense ministry. You're watching UATV.